We're all voters. We deserve a right. We have a right to know what is going on behind closed doors. The fact that I have to draw this out when it should be publicly available information, I think it raises serious concerns about not only transparency, but are we really living in a democracy? And I don't believe that we are.
Coming up on British thought leaders, Lewis Brackpool says citizen journalism can hold power to account.
More and more people are starting to realise that governments need to be held accountable a bit more. Institutions need to be held accountable just that little bit more. And they've realised that the mainstream media aren't doing their work properly.
Lewis talks about stories he's broken using freedom of information requests, including water contamination.
But it raises serious concerns about the infrastructure in our companies. I mean, I thought that lead was banned, personally. So finding lead and things such as nickel, nitrates, all these different types of chemicals in the supply, I thought there's a big worry here.
And government messaging being placed in popular TV shows.
The TV isn't really about entertainment as much anymore. It's more about political messaging. And people don't want politics and all of this stuff mixed in with their entertainment.
Welcome to British Thought Leaders, I'm Lee Hall. Today I'm sitting down with journalist and commentator Lewis Brackpool. Lewis, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Lee. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, very well. It's good to be in London, I guess.
So you've done a lot of work with FOIs, and I was hoping you could start, before we get into your stories, telling us what FOIs are and how it all works.
Yeah, so it's a right, it's a very important right that Tony Blair once said is one of his biggest regrets in policy making. And what freedom of information requests are, every citizen can use it. You don't have to be an academic, you don't have to be a journalist, you don't have to have any sort of qualifications for it. It's your right to obtain information that institutions, governmental or companies have on certain topics or information regarding things such as statistical analysis or even just information holding about a particular topic that you're personally attached or passionate about. Every company, you have the right to access information from each company, whether it be through a freedom of information request or something known as a subject access request, which is information about yourself that a company may hold from you. Like I said, it's free. All you need to do is write a polite email, and you can, even if you're stonewalled, which I'm sure we'll talk about, it's still an answer. And I think it's incredibly important, especially for people of the UK, to utilise this route, because I believe, unfortunately, that freedom of speech has been put in the coffin in this country. So are companies obliged to reply to you? Yes, they have to reply under law, but they don't always have to, as we'll talk about, they don't always have to provide the answers. There's certain exemptions that unfortunately are being used as loopholes, especially in areas such as the Cabinet Office and lots of different departments using various exemptions to try and skirt around answering particular questions, tough questions usually. Right. So diving into some of the stories you've broken with this method, so one was the water contamination. Yes. Can you tell us about your investigation? Yeah, so I was on a phone call with a friend, and we were talking all things health and, you know, what's in our food, what's in our water. And I thought, do you know what, I don't think anyone's really dived into what is the contaminants in all of our water supply across the UK. So I sat one afternoon and just wrote out a request to nearly every single water company in the country. How many are there? Oh gosh, over 20. So I asked, nearly 20 or about over 20, information on whether our water supply, pre-treatment and post-treatment water, whether it contained any heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, microplastics. There's something called forever chemicals that can't break down in the body or the environment. And I asked for all of this bit of information from all these companies, and I've started to get replies from all of these. One company is gatekeeping, is trying to charge me £187 for public information, which I thought was a bit odd, a bit suspect. But there was one particular company, the first one I looked at when I was given the data, and it showed pre-treatment water. And this is water that hadn't gone through dilation or the process before it hits consumers' taps. So it's not necessarily reflective of what comes out of a consumer's taps, but there's more to it. This pre-treatment water, every single list or every single contaminant that was listed on this graph, on this Excel sheet, excuse me, listed every contaminant that went over the legal limit. And one of them that was very striking was unflushed lead. So when you turn on a tap and you have a glass underneath, say you wake up in the morning, turn on the tap and you have a glass, it's the immediate water that just comes out of the tap. And what it revealed was unflushed lead had 1.8 million micrograms per litre of lead within this water supply. The legal limit is 10. So that's when I thought...
Just a basic 10? Just
a basic 10. Really? And that's when I thought something's wrong, clearly. And I ran it through different means of trying to figure out whether this is actually, whether I've missed something. I sent it off to a friend who was an expert in data analysis, and he double-checked it, and he said, no, that's a real figure. This is at a water supply somewhere. So what that means is we have a big problem with infrastructure mainly, or maybe there's something external that is happening. I don't quite know yet. I'm still trying to investigate that. But it raises serious concerns about the infrastructure in our companies. I mean, I thought that lead was banned, personally. So finding lead and things such as nickel, nitrates, all these different types of chemicals in the supply, I thought there's a big worry here. The other thing that came back that I thought was striking is when I asked about pharmaceuticals or microplastics in the water supply, every single company had replied saying that our water company, this is the same answer nearly for every single one, do not require to test whether the water pre-treatment or post-treatment contains any pharmaceuticals or microplastics in the supply. The only way for people to find out is if they do their own testing at home and if they have health troubles and they trace it back to them drinking their own water, or if the water company files a boiling notice out to the consumers because there might have been a leakage or some problems. So we've got a serious oversight, and that's just from sending off these requests to these companies to ask for the data from 2020 to present now. And it's striking.
So when something goes over the limit it's supposed to be, is there steps that are supposed to happen? Yes,
so they have to report that to the UK's health agency. They have to file a report in some respects. They go through a reporting system. That's why I could obtain this data, because anything that goes over the legal limit has to be logged. They can't hide from that. And when you ask for this data, they legally obviously have to provide it. The only time that they can apply things like exemptions is if it goes over a statutory limit of £600, and that's the amount of work that needs to be done going through files and collating the files together. So yeah, there is a process, and the water companies, to their due diligence, have been very good at filing this and reporting it. It's just when you dig into it, you can quite clearly see that there's a big problem.
So have you got to the point where you have any idea of what's behind this problem? Is it like an ageing infrastructure thing or corporate incompetence?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I believe there is something to do with the ageing infrastructure. I mean, all of our industries, unfortunately, are owned by foreign entities. For example, Wessex Water is owned by like Malaysia. There's a lot of companies that are owned by Chinese influence as well, and lots of external countries outside of the UK. And there just seems to be a lack of care when it comes to something so basic as drinking water. But for me, it seems to me that it's pointing towards ageing infrastructure and just lack of oversight, which is a problem because we all drink, drinking water throughout this country. We all have that basic need for clean water in a country such as, England or Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. So, yeah, I do believe it's down the route of infrastructure. Some people have pointed out that the statistics show things like aluminium in the pre-treatment water supply at the source. I can't explain that. I don't know where that's coming from. Aluminium's very, very particular. Some people have linked it to lots of different things, but I don't know yet. So it's hard to make a judgment at this point. And I try not to speculate too much until I get concrete evidence before coming out and saying, it could be that. But ageing infrastructure is apparent in this country, especially. So it's likely to be that.
Yeah. I'm not one for big government, but maybe some things do need nationalising.
Yes.
And do we really want a Chinese company owning our water company?
Exactly, yeah, that's a big question. I've been having this debate with a few friends, and for things such as drinking water and rail, I'm actually more in favour of nationalisation, but I am against big state, the expansion of the state. So if we was to do something as serious and as drastic as nationalisation, I mean, Scotland already do it. We're one of the very few countries that do have a privatised water system. Yeah, I'm actually in favour of it, but only if we shrink the state first. I think there's a lot of public spending, especially within government. I mean, you can only look at the Doge UK that's been set up by Charlotte Gill, who does fantastic work there, showcasing how much of public spending is being spent on just wasteful, random social revolutionary projects that have got nothing to do with the public interest. So if we shrink that first, then yes, I think nationalisation is probably the way forward.
Members of the public who may be concerned about what's in their water, I mean, what steps can they actually take?
Good question. Obviously, I made it clear in my video when I was reporting on this that I obviously can't give health advice. That's just standard. I'm just a journalist that's a little bit nosy, that wants to find out information. Personally, I use a water filter for underneath their sinks, or underneath my sink, sorry, to try and get rid or as much as contaminant as possible. I do actually encourage people, and take it with a pinch of salt. I do actually encourage people to actually test their water because 99% of us don't. And so if you're really worried or you're concerned about what is actually in supply, one of the measures to find out whether we do have any contaminant is not necessarily relying on the water company, but for doing it yourself. So I do recommend having a little look at maybe a test kit of some sort, and just to see what comes back. It might be absolutely nothing, might be something, but if something does come back, you have to report it. And that way it's added to the data, and they can, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, they can fix that.
So as an independent journalist or someone working in the new media, it can be difficult with some of these types of stories that are heavily technical, maybe it's medical or scientific. I mean, what steps can you take to try and ensure the veracity of your finding?
Yeah, of course. If you have friends, I've been very, very fortunate to have friends that are very qualified, have really great, educational standards in things such as data, statistical analysis, things like that, cross-referencing with that. Sometimes, and I know this is quite controversial, sometimes utilising AI can actually be very helpful for a lot of people who don't know, let's say, legal jargon, because I don't. That can help break it down and make it understood a bit more for the general public that want to get involved with things like citizen journalism. It's never been more important now, in my view, for citizens to actually take part in things such as this, like FOI requests, or just getting involved in filming something that you're passionate about, story-related, news-related, because we're all connected now via social media. But it is important to cross-reference. It's always important to double-check, and that's what I've always tried to encourage as well for people that may not have a qualification or anything like that, like me.
So we've recently seen this drama Adolescence. Not sure if you've heard of it. I mean,
It's the number one question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Have you watched
everywhere. And it seemed to come out at the same time as the embedding of the Online Safety Act.
Yes.
Follows a bit of a synchronicity there. So you did a great FOI about the connections between government messaging and popular entertainment. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so I put in a request to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport to ask whether the government from 2020 to now, to present, was involved in any collaborations with the government and TV companies, producers, script writers that may embed government messaging through fictional television programmes. And this was off a back of a conversation again with a friend, and I don't know why, he watches EastEnders. It's not my cup of tea, but you know, a lot of people do watch it. Millions watch it across the country, so I'm not judging. He was watching it, and during one of the storylines, one of the characters mentioned climate intervention and specifically geoengineering, which was bizarre for an EastEnders storyline. Like, it was very, you know, sore thumb. And we were talking about it, and I said, "Oh, do you know that there's a lot of evidence to show that the government are involved in script writing for fictional television programmes because it's broadcast to millions of people across the UK?" And he said, "Well, that wouldn't surprise me." I went to check articles to back up what I was saying, and I couldn't find any. So I thought, okay, this is a perfect time to put in the request. And their response, they've delayed my request for another 20 working days because they've cited an exemption which basically says it could affect the public affairs, meaning disclosure of this information could affect their messaging, number one. It could affect media backlash if they come out and say, actually, yes, we do actually hold this particular information, but certain things we have to basically exempt from the public to see in case the public are riled up and are upset about what is being pushed via messaging. So they have confirmed that they hold the data. There's no question about that. It's a case of what, and what particular narratives are they pushing. You mentioned adolescence. That's come around very, very recently. I mean, Keir Starmer called it a documentary, which is very, several times. So I don't know what's going on there. A lot of the actors, Stephen Graham, has done work in the past with organisations such as Hope Not Hate, who are very embedded with the government as well. So it doesn't surprise me that a lot of the push through certain subjects within adolescence coincides with this particular FOI request. It mentions online extremism, it mentions incel culture, you know, which I thought was very crass considering the actor is the actor for the boy who's the perpetrator of the crime in the series is a 13-year-old child, and they're calling him an incel, which is insane.
Which means involuntary.
Involuntary celibacy, yeah. Which, yeah, very, very insane. But obviously things such as online extremism and all of these different topics all correlate with this FOI request, because I asked specifically about not only public health narratives, such as COVID-19, vaccinations, mental health, but also with narratives pushing things like social cohesion, migration, online extremism, and lots of different subjects, and they all seem to align with the same messaging that's being pushed out with adolescents as well. I only watched 50 minutes of it, and I can understand why people that aren't in the political sphere really like it, because it's so well shot. You know, it's that one shot, one take style, like Children of Men, the opening for that film, because it captivates the audience, and you know, you can lead on from that. But then when you delve into it, there is something a bit sinister underneath it. You know, the storyline is obviously influenced by certain stories, real events that have happened. There was a stabbing of a young girl in Croydon by a 17-year-old lad. you know, and it seems to be this emphasis on race as well, through adolescence as well, where it's focusing on white working class young boys, which is a very, very prickly subject in this country. So clearly there is something going on there, and it does tie in with this specific request, but I'm to wait another 20 working days to find out exactly what they're going to disclose to me, so it should be interesting.
It doesn't feel kind of a ridiculous idea that the government may do this kind of thing. If we look at the COVID times, the nudge unit it was happening.
Yeah, exactly. The behavioural nudge units were really pushing out all the public health messaging, encouraging people to get vaccinated through mRNA vaccinations. There was someone actually posted underneath when I declared that the government had held this information. Someone posted a clip from EastEnders, and it was during, I think, 2021, where they ran a segment where this woman would walk into this shop, and the two people behind the counter were talking about, oh, I've just got my jab, I've just got my vaccine, you know, and they were really delighted. And this woman came in and said, no, we're all lab rats. And it was the narrative of, you know, I don't know what's being put into my body, and, you know, we should have a choice, and also we don't know the long-term data, and then said, can I have a packet of cigarettes, please? And it was that tongue-in-cheek mockery of people who were very sceptical, and that was on EastEnders, and that was really pushing. People noticed that and were sharing that around at the time.
So they're saying, like, she cares about her health with a jab and not with the cigarettes.
But not with the cigarettes, yeah. So it's that tongue-in-cheek mockery of the skeptic, which I think is awful, because people have a right to be sceptical. We don't know the long-term data, and unfortunately we're starting to see the effects of, the COVID-19 vaccine, which is really sad. But you can really see it if you trace footsteps back and you look back at fictional television programs and see the behavioural nudge units using government narratives and messaging to push onto the public. It's so apparent, it's so obvious, but finding an article to back that up is very difficult. So that's why I thought, well, this is an opportunity to put in a request, and they've confirmed it, which is, well, I don't like to be vindicated on horrible subjects, but unfortunately this is the case.
Well, the response you got, there is some information, but it might prejudice public affairs. You basically see that as, yes, but we don't want to reveal it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are afraid that it might cause public backlash. And to be honest, if something like that has been hidden from the public in plain sight, but they won't outright admit to it, and it's public information, it just needs to be drawn out, no wonder people are going to be upset and annoyed. And people that hadn't noticed it before would then retrace their steps and think and believe, or come to their realisation that the TV isn't really about entertainment as much anymore. It's more about political messaging. And people don't want politics and all of this stuff mixed in with their entertainment. There's a big debate about politics within sport. You know, football teams taking the knee for organisations such as Black Lives Matter, stuff like that. The Marxist far-left organisation. People don't want that. And when they find out that their fictional TV programmes are being used for public or governmental messaging, people aren't going to be happy. So no wonder they're running a public interest test to try and figure out whether they should release it or not. So we're going to see. But either way, if they do redact or if they do keep away a lot of the data, you can follow up with an internal review and a complaint to the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office. So I'll be planning to do that if they do try and gatekeep any more information.
So there were government meetings with high-profile individuals, one being Bill Gates, another being Larry Fink from BlackRock. So you submitted an FOI request about this. I mean, why did you submit the request? What were you hoping to find, and what did you actually find? Yeah,
so last year in October 2024, Bill Gates met with Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves just before the budget announcement, before the inheritance tax was announced on farmers in the agricultural sector. Now, Bill Gates is one of the largest private farmland owners in the US and has a lot of influence, not just in UK policy, believe it or not, But of course in agriculture, in this country, especially in Scotland, he does a lot of work up there vaccinating cattle and utilising different medical interventions with cattle. And when the budget was announced and the inheritance tax was announced on the farmers, people, rightly so, online were starting to be pointing fingers at Bill Gates and saying that he could have some involvement because he met just before, and could it have influenced public policy in any way? Who knows? So people were rightly speculating. Now, instead of coming out and speculating, I thought, well, another opportunity. I want to figure out what was said in these meetings. So I put forward, firstly, a request to the Cabinet Office to ask whether what was discussed at these meetings with Bill Gates and Keir Starmer, whether the agricultural sector was involved, anything to do with public health, anything regarding these things. They first then delayed the request after 20 working days, saying that they needed to cite a public interest test to make sure that releasing the information might not harm the policy-making process of policy formulation. Meaning that if they were to release what they have, any memos, any written notes, that it could prejudice that policy-making process. And I thought, hang on a minute, why is a foreign billionaire like Bill Gates, why does someone like him have so much power in influencing policy in the UK when he's not an elected member? He's someone that isn't a citizen of this country. He can't vote in this country either. Yet he has the power, so it seems, through these delays and through what the Cabinet Office is telling me, that he is affecting policy formation. And that to me was alarm bells. So it was delayed, and in January it was delayed again. During that time I put in another request about Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. So Keir Starmer was gloating on X about Larry Fink from BlackRock and how the UK is partnering with BlackRock for infrastructure investment.
This is a massively powerful organisation.
Massively. It's the world's largest asset management firms. This isn't just a small corporate or like small business that's, has competition. They are the biggest, so there's no competition. They're instrumental for things such as environmental social governance, ESG. And they're involved with things like the rebuilding of Ukraine, and pensions as well, UK pensions. So they have a lot of power, a lot of influence, and they are the world's largest. So I asked what was said in these meetings, as well, at the same time as waiting for the Bill Gates response. And around the same time, they gave me both answers. The Bill Gates meeting first was sent back, and they claimed that there is no records of this meeting taking place, which was confusing.
There were photos.
There were photos, yeah, everyone saw them. Even Keir Starmer and everyone was posting about them. They realised they had sent me the wrong reply, which is bizarre, and then clarified, oh yes, the meeting did take place, but we can't release it to you because of policy formulation. So filed an internal review, that's being delayed, and we're now in April, and I sent this back in November. So we're still going. So there's still an answer to be given. Larry Fink from BlackRock, this FOI request, that was delayed twice. Again, another one, public interest test. Section 43, I believe, which is commercial interests. So it could prejudice any competition. And also policy formulation again. So releasing information about this meeting once again is being stonewalled because it could prejudice policy formulation. Why are these government meetings that they're gloating about online suddenly affecting our policy-making process? That, to me, is alarm bells, considering that they're outsiders. Very bizarre. So I'm still going with these. We're still waiting for the internal reviews to come back. I've sent off a complaint to the ICO about the Larry Fink meeting to try and figure out whether they've checked everything and why they've chosen to redact all of this or not even give me any memos. They've given me minutes, but it's not enough. They won't even give us an idea of topics, which I think you start to realise that democracy in this country, in my view, becomes almost like an illusion if you have people outside externally influencing policy formation. And yeah, I think the public have a right to be annoyed and concerned about that.
If the government is meeting high-profile individuals, or if it is putting narratives into popular entertainment, but those are having a good effect for the public, then why not be transparent and open about it?
This is the number one question. You know, what is there to hide? Transparency. When Keir Starmer was elected into Parliament, he claimed that his government was going to be the most transparent. So I've put them to task, and quite clearly they're not transparent in the slightest, because if they're stonewalling just meetings with people who are now, according to them, influencing policy making, what's the problem with releasing it? You know, we're all voters. We deserve a right. We have a right to know what is going on behind closed doors. The fact that I have to draw this out when it should be publicly available information about topics, what was discussed, any future investments, anything. No, stonewalled. And I think it raises serious concerns about not only transparency, but are we really living in a democracy? And I don't believe that we are.
What is on the agenda for you to look into going forward? What stories can we expect?
So I'm currently looking into several things. I'm still waiting back about the TV government collaboration. I'm trying to draw out some more information. An ex-MP by the name of Norman Baker, who was part of the Liberal Democrats, 22 years ago revealed information on things called germ warfare, which I'm very new to this particular subject. But there was experiments being conducted by the British state, and this was all uncovered 22 years ago when Norman Baker filed Freedom of Information requests, where the government was doing some very shady experiments from not only the 50s and 60s right the way through to the 80s, things such as releasing bacteria and things into not only the atmosphere, but there was also this chemical being used that simulates anthrax, and it was released on the tube, the underground tube. And a lot of these files containing all of these experiments are in the National Archive, and I'm trying to draw them back out. I'm trying to get in contact with Norman Baker to discuss this further, but there is suggestions that the British state has been running chemical experiments on the citizens of this country, and this was all uncovered. It sounds like conspiratorial stuff, but this was all uncovered 22 years ago, and I believe that it's relevant to resurface this and to analyse this again and to go through all the papers from the Ministry of Defence and the National Archives, because from the last 5 years, I think the events that occurred during COVID-19, I think, woke a lot of people up to government narratives, to experimentations such as that, and tracing their footsteps back to what else has the government done to its own citizens. And I think the public has a right to know some of the nasty things that has happened to its citizens. So I'm trying to draw that out, that information out. They have confirmed it today that they're looking into the case. So I'm hoping to receive a response in 20 working days. More about the water supply as well. I'm still waiting for a few more to do with contaminants. And I'm looking into corruption within the barber shops, the vape shops, phone repair stores that potentially are being used as money laundering, and just finding the data and collating that together and trying to investigate hotspots and trying to figure out where has a higher crime rate with regards to money laundering in these sorts of establishments as well. So yeah, lots to do.
Looking forward to those. So if we look at the kind of how legacy media always worked, you had the journalists and then you had everyone who's receiving their journalism, if you like, whereas your approach seems a bit more like people can get involved, the public can actually have a role in uncovering some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think you realise that the legacy media are trapped in their own bubble, in their own kind of machine and their own framework. And people who do not have degrees or can't afford to go to university or anything like that, but have a passion for things such as journalism or investigative work, can get involved. You don't need a grade to tell you that you can investigate things and find information. And like I mentioned at the start, free speech, I believe, has been put in the coffin in this country, and the last tools you can utilise is not only your camera phone, but also freedom of information requests. And I just encourage people to get involved and to post it around legally, of course. Don't use any private information, obviously. The basic stuff. We're all connected now via social media. X has opened up a lot of opportunities for engagement, as well as people connecting easily. So you can now get in contact with commentators or journalists if you don't have a platform and share your findings. And even if you're stonewalled or you're not given an answer, that's still a story, potentially still a story. So yeah, I like the more get involved attitude as opposed to gatekeeping information or taking the information for yourself. I think it sounds cheesy, but information is power, and it can, a man with a laptop that's connected to the internet can change the world now, and that's the world that we live in. So why not get involved?
A lot of the things you look at would have a while ago been called conspiracy theories, and then they turn out, oh, this one's real, oh, this one's real. I mean, do you think we're entering some kind of post-conspiracy world?
I think we are. I think the COVID era has really opened up people to lots of different subjects that they might have dismissed before or pre-2020. And that's because of governments, that's because of institutions that have been running things to the ground with narratives, a lot of lying and spin. I mean, take Brexit, for example, take Trump. Huge, gigantic moments in politics, huge moments that have changed the discourse across the West, not just in this country or in America. And I think more and more people are starting to realise that governments need to be held accountable a bit more. Institutions need to be held accountable just that little bit more. And they've realised that the mainstream media aren't doing their work properly and are kind of running for cover, a lot of these institutions. Things such as migration, big issue in this country. Things aren't being reported on fairly. And I think that's what people want, transparency and fairness. And in this post-conspiracy theorist era, I think people are now going back, looking at things that they thought, I wasn't sure about that, and just running it through again and double-checking it. And I think people now want to know more. There's this thirst for information now.
And finally, I just wanted to take a step back, ask you a more personal question. So I know before you used to be an atheist and you were a communist, and now you're a Christian conservative. I mean, what changed? What was your journey?
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, I was a big progressive when I was studying politics. I think that's due to the educational system. I can, humble myself and say, yes, I think I was influenced a lot by the educational system and the surroundings and the messaging that was pushed out. Studied politics, failed it. Yeah, which is fine, no problem. but I was a progressive communist. Didn't believe in God, didn't believe in anything like that. Brexit happened. That changed my views on things such as national sovereignty. The fact that Brussels could dictate a lot of laws that were happening in the UK when it came to migration. I believe the guy, was it Abu Hamza, who we were trying to deport and we couldn't, and we were being blocked by the EU and Brussels, and I thought that was wrong. So that changed my opinion on a lot of stuff. Trump was a big one. Started seeing the narratives fall away from Trump. With religion, yeah, I never believed in anything. And 27 years of age, I'm 31 now, at 27, I then stepped into the world of journalism and media, and my only friends became, well, all Christians, and I'd never interacted really with Christians. I think I knew one Christian in school, and we all mocked him because he was the science guy of our year. He was, you know, super smart in the science field, and he converted to Christianity even when we were 17, 18, and we all thought it was weird, and we all mocked him for it. And I feel dreadful about it now. But I actually interacted properly with Christians when I was, 27, became very good friends, and I had this presupposition about Christians. I thought that they were, you know, very isolated people. I thought that they were nerds, essentially. And, you know, to be fair, it fits the bill with me because I love data, I love looking at things like that. So, you know, it's funny. But I never really had my atheism sort of questioned a lot by Christians, but it was never militant. They weren't trying to convert or anything like that. It was never forced. And then something happened which I couldn't explain. I had an experience which left me very emotional for about a week, every day. And I couldn't explain why it had happened. And I started to question things a bit more. And a friend said to me, who's Christian, he said, look, man, I see guys like you a lot. I meet guys like you a lot where they display Christian ethics. Christian ethics and just outwardly behaviour as opposed to inward. And he said, just don't leave it too late. And that stuck with me. And I started to think about it a bit more. I started to look into archaeological stuff surrounding Christ and his resurrection. And I couldn't argue with it. There's nothing I could argue. I was looking at it through a journalistic mindset and a lens. Couldn't argue with it. And I started to go back to some of the fundamental questions. Why would the apostles die for a lie? People were hunted and killed, crucified, hanged upside down, skin removed from them, all these dreadful things, and all they needed to do was recant. So why didn't they do it? Why would they die for a lie? And that was a big question that I couldn't quite answer. So then I started to really look into it, and now I'm pursuing Orthodox Christianity, and it's weird. It's weird. I never thought I'd ever say something like that. So it's quite a journey. So now a fully fledged Christian conservative or on the right, dissident, I don't know what you want to call me. I don't really know anymore. But it's been a wild journey, and I'm so grateful. Super, super grateful.
Lewis Brackpool, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.